And we are back for episode 3 of the top 80 albums of the 80s, as voted by you guys. You've done a wonderful job so far, even though we've had a few things that, maybe aren't our favorites technically. But my friend Nathaniel and I, we're here doing it again, counting down in this episode, number 60 to 51. So psyched about it, man. Can't wait.
Yes, sir, as always, and I think that there might be a little dissension on this one too, but that's part of the fun, I suppose. And
Yeah, it's highly
yeah, I'm
possible.
but there's some really good choices on here too, so I'm excited to get into it with you.
Yeah, me too, man. So let's get right to it at number 60. Texas Flood by Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble, his debut album from 1983. This is such an amazing blues record. I love Stevie Ray Vaughan. I actually had, I think, 4 of his albums on my list. Sadly, this is the only one that's making it. Spoiler alert, but you know, I'm not going to be too upset because this I do think is his best one. I don't think he ever quite topped this. I mean, just the song "Pride and Joy" alone, I think he's so well known for that. Just that that amazing guitar intro, and when you hear his guitar, you know it's him. There's
Right.
not that many guitarists that you can say that, and especially in the blues realm. And his cover of Texas Flood, his cover of Mary Had a Little Lamb by Buddy Guy. He takes it to another level. Even Buddy Guy himself was like, I love what he did with it. And then the instrumentals, I think, are just incredible. Testify, the original Lenny that he wrote for his then wife at the time, is so beautiful, and the production is great. Like, he really revitalized the genre of the blues in the 80s single-handedly, even though it was going on. Like, he brought it back to life, and for good reason. I mean, I think um, second to Hendrix, he's like one of the best guitarists of all time. So um,
Second, huh?
well, he's up there, man. Top
Wow,
5
yeah.
for sure, in my opinion.
Wow.
But yeah, man, I guess you don't feel the same way.
He's in my probably my top 15.
Okay,
He's one of the
fair
best.
enough.
I mean, he's one of the best guitarists of all time. I don't think anybody can deny that. And
Yeah.
just unfortunate how short-lived his career was with like a lot of these all-time greatest guitarists like Hendrix and Dwayne Allman. Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
this album was on my list, and I think it's at a fairly good spot. As you know, Pride and Joy is the big one that everyone knows. Just such a great bouncing riff too, like just going on throughout the chorus of this song. And yeah, I mean, just amazing playing throughout. As I was
Mhm.
saying, I mean, you can't knock his chops as a guitarist. If you do, you're out of your damn mind. But dude, maybe I don't know if I like this more than Pride and Joy, but Lenny is
Mhm.
amazing because
Yeah.
I think I may have said my piece about the blues before, where I
Mhm.
think it's a pretty kind of predictable formula when it comes to where the chord progressions go. But this
Yeah.
song bends these chord progressions in a really jazzy way, and I absolutely love how they go about the song. I think it's probably the most beautiful song on this entire record. And I could
Mhm.
talk about that one for at
Mhm.
least a couple minutes, but just to spare some time here, yeah, I mean, this is a really good album from top to bottom, and I'm glad to see Stevie Ray Vaughan make the list.
Yeah, me too. I mean, in my opinion, should have been much higher. But as we've talked about on both the 60s and 70s countdown, the blues is one of those genres that
Yeah.
usually gets screwed. So,
That's the
I,
80s for me.
yeah, exactly. I'm happy it made the list.
Yeah.
So I'll give it that. So thank you guys for voting for it. Now at number 59.
Life is a mystery.
Like a Prayer by Madonna, her fourth studio album released right at the end of the decade in 1989, and unquestionably one of her best. And this is really such a huge leap for her lyrically. I think this is easily her best album lyrically up to this point in time. She really got personal with a lot of these songs, but also let's address the elephant in the room right away. The title track is not only one of the greatest pop songs from the 80s. It is one of the greatest songs of all time. Just the way that she blends like the religious connotations with the very sexual connotations of the song. You know, I'm down on my knees, I want to take you there. And she could be saying a prayer and she could be doing something else. I just think it's such a crazy double entendre that I just think shattered so many barriers lyrically. And then of course I think easily not only her best song but her most ambitious, when those choir vocals come in.
Yeah, the gospel aspect is really cool.
And it's amazing how she's able to blend these two things so seamlessly that shouldn't go together, right? But it is one of the greatest songs ever written. I will die on that hill. One of the best songs we will see on any album on this list. But even Express Yourself, yet again, is such a catchy track and a great ode to Sly and the Family Stone musically. You can hear it in the chorus and in the verses too. But just such a great anthem of female empowerment. Just talking about, yeah, like you might be having good sex or whatever, but it's like, how does your man treat you? That's what it should be about. It should be about your self-worth, not anything else. And just don't go for second best, baby. Put yourself to the test. I mean, it's just such a great pop song. I could say about a lot of the song. But then you have like songs like Till Death Do Us Part, where she's really kind of getting, because this is right around her divorce with Sean Penn, and you really hear like the toxicity of the relationship in this lyrics and the way that she segments these certain doings that are going on in the relation, these altercations that occur, is just so brilliantly put together. And just the line where she says at the end, but you know, I'm going to stay, you're going to try to make it work. It's like, geez, like it's really, really powerful. Cherish, yet again, is just one of her brightest and poppiest songs. Not crazy lyrically, but I mean, how can you not love that melody? Cherish the thought. You know, it's just so catchy. I think this is a problem why I don't, because I'm speaking very, very highly of this album. The reason, and it was on my list, and I would probably put it even a little bit higher, but I think the reason I don't quite love this album is I think it really drops off in the second half. Like Dear Jessie is just like, why is the song on this album where she's like talking about like, oh, and I didn't even mention Promise to Try or Oh Father, where she's like talking about the death of her mother and and the resentment that she had for her father for some reason. It's really, really personal, I think, and why I think this song or this album works so well. And also, not my favorite song, but Love Song has Prince on it. And I think he really makes it when he goes the, it's like such a thing. He really makes the song.
Right.
But songs like Dear Jessie feel very slight and very childish. I mean, that's what it was supposed to be. But because I think Patrick Leonard, he wrote it for his daughter in part, but it just doesn't fit with this album. And I just don't think that the tracks kind of fall off after that amazing front loaded first half. But yeah.
I mean, the first couple songs for sure. I mean, of course, some of her greatest hits. I mean, you've covered it, man. But wasn't on my list. I only had one Madonna album on my list, which thankfully we may see that also later. But yeah, I mean, everything you said, man. I mean, she's does she call herself the Queen of Pop, or am I thinking?
Might as well be, yeah. I think she
at
is
this point, but yeah, man, she ruled the '80s, and this was definitely one of her best. So, yeah, good pick, guys. So now at number 58. License to Ill by the Beastie Boys from 1986, their debut album, produced by Rick Rubin, and a lot of Led Zeppelin samples on this thing, by the way, right off the bat with Rhymin' and Stealin', which, normally that kind of thing would bother me, but they do it in such a cool way that it's really inventive, and they add their own guitar riffs on top of it that are totally different and fresh. They use, of course, the ocean on the song She's Crafty. I promise I'm not going to just talk about Zeppelin, but the songs, some of their most well-known, Fight for Your Right to Party, No Sleep Till Brooklyn. Some of them silly, like Girls, that maybe don't really hold up lyrically. Brass Monkey also, but so fun, man. Like throughout this whole album, there's just this attitude of these just young guys looking to mess stuff up, and I think it comes through in just a fun nostalgic way, for me anyway. I don't think it's their best album by far. Some people do, but I think it definitely deserves to be on the list.
I mean, I suppose. This is like, everyone says this is one of the greatest debut albums of all time. I absolutely disagree.
No,
I think
no, I
this
don't
is
think so.
super overrated, and I think it does not quite hold up as well. But what I will say about Rick Rubin's production, I mean, he went hard on, especially on that bass sound. That
Mhm.
sounds way far ahead of its time. But obviously the rapping, it's the 80s. It wasn't quite as refined as we'd get some stuff like Public Enemy or De La Soul later in the decade, or even Rakim,
Mhm.
for whatever that's worth. But I just think that this out it's just I guess frat rap, and I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
I'm not a
That's a
huge
good
fan of
term.
that. Like there's some really cool, as I said, some really cool production stuff, but I just don't get it. I mean, this, and I think that they have done better even in the 80s. So I just don't see why this one made the list per se, but I just, whatever, I guess. I mean, it's
You
fun. You're
gotta
not wrong
fight
about that.
for your right
I mean,
to
it's fun. I just
party.
why
Yeah,
is this
I
above
get it.
like Belladonna or like a prayer or like
Yeah.
even Stevie Ray? I just don't get it.
Yeah, I don't agree that
Yeah.
it's higher than Stevie Ray Vaughan. I mean, that's insane. But Beastie Boys, especially, and I know you haven't listened to that many of their albums beyond the 80s, but they're one of these groups that they continue to grow, and it's amazing like what the things they got into, especially
Oh yeah.
playing more of their own instruments and so forth. So it's a cool origin story of sorts, I guess, to come from this frat rap pack, whatever you want to
But
call them.
they
But
get better. They get
yeah,
better.
and the seeds of the talent are definitely there.
Sure.
So yeah, good pick, guys. So now at number 57, The Traveling Wilburys, Volume 1 by the Traveling Wilburys, which is an amazing supergroup when you just think about
The best
how
super group. Yeah.
maybe the best. Yeah. I mean, come on. You got a Beatle, you got George Harrison, you got Bob Dylan, you got Jeff Lynne from ELO, you got Tom Petty, and Roy freaking Orbison, which is just insane. And the opening track on here, which I think is definitely the best, Handle with Care, I think to this day is up there. Like when I watch Concert for George, when they did that concert at Royal Albert Hall for Harrison a year after he passed, and Tom Petty and Jeff Lynne sang this song, it brought me to tears, man, because it's like I put it up there with any of George Harrison's best songs. It's just brilliant. And um so many other hits from this album at the time. End of the Line is a really fun closer, but one that I always come back to and I love because I think it's just hilarious is Congratulations, the Bob Dylan song,
Really.
because it's just so funny. His delivery, congratulations for breaking my heart. It's just hilarious to me. But yeah, I know you just listened to this recently for the first time, so I'd love to hear your take.
Yeah, no, man, this would have made my list. I'll tell you right now. This album is really, really good. I almost loved it, I think, but
Mhm.
it's funnily enough, the reason I didn't was because of congratulations. I thought it was boring. The
Well, yeah,
congratulations, it got so repetitive to me. I was
it
like,
does. It does.
oh my goodness. But what I will say, man, I mean, this was a huge turning point for these guys, especially. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But Handle Me with Care, it's funny you mentioned that because I think it's a great song, obviously.
Mhm.
And the thing I love about it too is just how it basically emblemizes like all their different styles. At least
Mhm.
when it comes to Harrison and Orbison and Dylan. I mean, just when Orbison goes, I'm so
Yeah,
tired of being lonely, and that
genius.
voice. I mean, obviously anybody in their right mind would know that he's the best singer of that group, unless you're Rolling Stone magazine and say Bob Dylan is better, which is just ridiculous,
Insane.
quite frankly, bullshit. But man, this album is just so much fun from top to bottom, starting with him. And dude, like at the end, when you get that slide guitar solo from Harrison and Dylan on the harmonica, that's what I mean. It's like converging all their styles together. And I absolutely love one of my favorite songs on the album is Dirty World, which is basically a Dylan Root Rocks version of a Prince song. And it's just hysterical, man. And then when they're like coming, I guess the story was they went through these magazines and like took all these interesting phrases and kind of narrowed it down, like where they keep saying I love your like quest for junk food and like all this it's just so much fun, man. I also love Last Night, the reggae infused Tom Petty led track, which is a lot of fun too. Gotta love that song.
And just the fact that they took on all these alternate personas with the different first names.
Otis Wilbury, Nelson Wilbury. I mean, it's just crazy the stuff they came up with. And of course, I mean, Heading for the Light. Dude, I just wish there were more Harrison songs on here. And obviously he has 3. I could have cut off Congratulations or something, you know, like one of the Dylan songs. But I do have to
I'm not saying I love Congratulations, by the way. It stands out to me as very memorable. So, you know.
To me, not in a good way. It's I don't know. I just find it boring. But because that hook does get stuck in my head, whether I like it or not.
Right.
But Tweeter and the Monkey Man is such a funny take on a Bruce Springsteen song. I just don't like the chorus is annoying, or else I love the song, because obviously it's really, that's like, you can tell that was the song Dylan wrote. It's very evident just in the lyrics. But as I said, I love Heading for the Light. But dude, to me, you're saying about Handle Me with Care as being one of Harrison's best. I think End of the Line is one of the best songs, because it's really, you know, it's all right, you know, going to the end of the line. I mean, it's just so catchy, man. And just and I swear I've heard that before, because it's just so bright, so sunny. It perfectly emblemizes what was so great about Harrison as a songwriter.
And the production by Jeff Lynne is I mean, as always, he's always stellar. So,
and it's great you mentioned that, because yet again, as I was saying, this was such a defining, really a turning point for all these guys' careers, because literally the next year, Bob Dylan would come out with Oh Mercy, which we already talked about on this list. And obviously Tom Petty with Full Moon Fever, and Ray Orbison with Mystery Girl, which would unfortunately be his last career comeback, because he died a couple months after this album came out. But I mean, with hits like You Got It, I mean, come on, like that was such a huge hit for him. And really doesn't sound like it's from the 80s at all, really time. So really, just for what this did for this group, and obviously George Harrison coming out with Cloud Nine a year before this, I mean, this really was such a big turning point in their careers, and has to be commended for that. And really,
and Full Moon Fever came out a year after from Tom Petty, which some people say is his best. So
it might be, we'll see. But yeah, I mean, this is a really, really good choice. Wish I had on my list, but I think it's at a pretty appropriate spot here.
Yeah, great pick, guys. Gotta love it. And now that brings us to number 56.
Tattoo You by the Rolling Stones, which marks the second artist to have made it all the way through these decades, the 60s, 70s, and the 80s. Obviously, gotta love the Stones. Gotta love Start Me Up, which I just think is so catchy. Really, start me up, you know, you'll make a grown man cry. I mean, just iconic. Not one of their best songs, but definitely one of their most iconic. And I think I loved Waiting on a Friend.
Those are the only two that I really enjoy as well.
This, I don't get it. This album is so overrated, and it's, I mean, it's fine. But really, this stuff is kind of boring. It's fairly rote blues stuff, and honestly, this might be a controversial take, but I even liked Emotional Rescue more, the album before this, which almost made my list. And I know a lot of people don't like that one, but I thought they were doing a lot more interesting stuff, especially coming off of Some Girls. You know, that was the album right after. But this, I just what does this for you? I really don't know, because it just sounds like boring blues music, and the Stones have done so much better. I just don't know. I get people love this album, like I know people love this album, but I don't get it. And honestly, like I think the last great classic Stones record with Some Girls. But
Mhm.
yeah, apparently a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
so
I
I can't make you
agree.
guys on this.
I think they really fell off quality wise in the 80s, and yeah, I'm kind of with you too, where Some Girls was probably their last thing that I would
Yeah.
say was really great. I mean, they did kind of make a comeback in the 90s with Voodoo Lounge a little bit,
Sure.
and then I feel like some of the stuff they've done more recently in the last decade has been really cool. But yeah, this one doesn't really do it for me. It wasn't on my list either, and but I get it. It's the Stones, and
Yeah,
it's
but
cool that they're also on all three lists. But
I do like it for that fact. But I mean,
that's about it, though.
there's
Yeah,
so many better albums from the 80s that I thought were going to
yeah.
make the list that didn't, and this is one of them. I mean, look, I mean, I know a lot of people, so maybe I should shut up because I know a lot of people do love this, but I do not get it.
Yeah.
It's not, I enjoy it to a certain extent. Like I'm not saying I dislike it, but
Yeah,
I'm just
even
very
Start Me Up,
indifferent
it's
to it.
not one of my favorite tracks of
I
theirs
know
or
you said
anything,
that
but
before.
so I maybe I just relate it to Bill Gates or something every time I hear it, but because they use that as the Microsoft theme song or something
Oh, okay.
in the 90s.
Start up the
But
computer, I guess.
yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know.
It's so stupid.
Love
It
the
ruined
Stones,
the song for many people
yeah.
probably, but anyway. But yeah, it's cool. It's the Stones, so whatever.
Yeah.
So now at number 55, Eliminator by ZZ Top from 1983. Yeah, I can see this making the list. It wasn't on mine, but kind of like Stevie Ray Vaughan that I mentioned earlier, Billy Gibbons' guitar is very recognizable, especially, I think, even more so in the 80s. These guys had been around since the 70s and had some really great stuff, some bluesy, Texas fueled rock and roll. And here in the 80s, production wise, I guess they decided to go with kind of a bigger sound, employed some synthesizers on some songs, some drum machines, and I just remember all the music videos, which were super fun. For "Gimme All Your Lovin'," which has a great, memorable chorus, really great hooks on this album. Sharp Dressed Man, of course, was a great one. It seemed like all the videos had, lots of good looking women, and of course the three members of ZZ Top, two of which with the huge beards, and then plus Frank Beard, just so happened to be named the drummer, which is interesting. And then Legs, of course, was another big hit. Aside from the hits, I think like the album gets a little samey for me. So I that may be why I didn't even think of it to have on my list, but I can definitely see why a lot of you voted for it. No one else really sounds like these guys, and Billy Gibbons, I think, is one of the greatest guitarists of all time, very underrated. So it's cool that they made the list.
Yeah, isn't it so interesting that artists or in bands like ZZ Top didn't make the 70s list, but they made the 80s list? I just find that really because it's like as you
Yeah.
said, they started in the 70s. I've not listened to this band yet. But I know Dusty Hill just passed away like
Mhm.
last year or something. So they've been one that I've been like thinking is on the back burner because there's so many artists that I got to listen to, and I
Yeah.
just unfortunately haven't gotten to this one. But I hear really great things about Billy Gibbons' guitar
Yeah.
skill, and I've heard Sharp Dressed Man be mentioned so many times when I was looking up reviews for this album, and yeah, apparently it's like one of their best songs.
Yeah, great riffs, great catchy choruses. I think you would actually dig it quite a bit
Oh, I
because
would.
it's probably their most poppy album out of all of them, and I think that's a good thing for them. So yeah, I dig it. Good pick, guys. So now at number 54.
Document by REM. Yeah, this band had to make the list. But this is their fifth studio album, and their only studio album to make the list. I was really bummed out because I think Life's Rich Pageant. I love that album, and I think it missed the list by like a spot.
Mhm.
So that was kind of a bummer to see that one kind of get kicked to the curb just a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think that my problem with REM originally is they just made music to sound good. The lyrics didn't really mean jack shit anything. And I think that that was my biggest problem was Michael Stipe's lyrics. But especially on Life's Rich Pageant, I really feel like they started going somewhere, started to say something. And I agree that this album, though I don't quite love it, is definitely their second best from the 80s and really contains their two best songs, at least that I've heard so far, because I'm still going through REM as in It's the End of the World as We Know It, which I think is a lyrical masterpiece. Just the way Michael Stipe is like spouting off all these very disorderly political statements, bringing them all together, and some really like obscure stuff too, very abstract, very
Yeah.
I guess what's the word I'm trying to find? But regardless, it really does feel like, and it's just such a great hook. It's the end of the world as we know it, and just
Yeah.
the backing vocals coming in. I mean, it's a bit surreal, like Dylan
Hmm.
on Highway 61 a little bit, which is one of the best compliments I can give it. And of course, the one I love is
Mm.
as soon as I heard that song, I'm like, oh, I've heard this. This one goes out to the one I love. And that
Yeah.
really unique voice that Michael Stipe has is just unmistakably his. I also really love Exhuming McCarthy and Disturbance at the Heron House.
Hmm.
Very, very interesting kind of like oblique lyrics that deal with, a lot of political themes that I really appreciated. And I just feel like this album, yet again, like I was saying with Like a Prayer, is an album that kind of drops off in the second half. Not that anything's bad on it or anything. It's just like there's
Hmm.
it's just the structural issues I have with it. It could have been more consistent. But I mean, if you're talking about 80s albums from REM, this is definitely up there as being one of their best.
Yeah, I think, in my opinion, I like it the most out of their 80s output. I think
Hmm.
they're one of those bands that kind of like you said, they continue to get better. Like,
Oh
because to
yeah.
me, Murmur is like so like a mumbling mess, but most people love it.
This sounds
Uh,
good.
but yeah, I mean, it does. But to me, like, I think, like you said on, was it Fables of the Reconstruction, or
Yeah.
that was your
Yeah.
favorite?
Might have
Yeah,
been.
they started to come into their own, like where you could really understand more of what Michael
Oh,
Stipe was singing.
well, no, I
And
know I don't agree on it for that album. I still
yeah,
think that's kind of there's like one song on there I think, oh, that's cool. They're actually saying something.
right.
Yeah.
But like on here, even Finest Work Song, I think has a cool anthemic chorus.
Mhm.
But I do think it is a bit hit or miss. The songs that you mentioned are all great,
They're
and
best.
some of my favorites to this day. And yeah, Mike Mills background vocals, especially on "It's the End of the World as We Know It,"
So
so
good.
great. And Peter Buck's guitar riff on "The One I Love" is just iconic, man.
It
It's timeless.
and I will say you can really hear the influence they had on alt rock in the 90s, especially
Hmm.
like bands like Nirvana. You listen to that and then listen to Come As You Are.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
exactly.
the influence is unmistakable. And I think uh Kurt Cobain said I think Automatic for the People and also Green, which is from the 80s but didn't make the list, or in his top 50 albums of all
Mhm.
time. And we might get to Automatic for the People in
Oh,
some other series.
we better
But
on the 90s. Yeah,
yeah.
that's to me that's my favorite. But
Mhm.
yeah, I'm so glad REM made the list in some form, because yeah, I mean, you can't have, like, there wouldn't be, well, I don't know if there wouldn't be a Nirvana, but many other bands wouldn't exist without these
Oh,
guys. So
absolutely not.
so yeah, great pick, guys. So now at number 53, Scary Monsters and Super Creeps by David Bowie from 1980, his 14th studio album at this
A lot
point.
of stuff.
Yeah, but not particularly one of my faves. And I think we're on the same wavelength. Like, I'm not a huge Bowie fan. I would say my favorite is probably Ziggy and like that early 70s era. But I'm not crazy about the sound overall on this record, and especially the way he sings a lot of these songs. It's just not that appealing to me. I think Ashes to Ashes is probably the highlight on this album, but that being said, I don't love it. I know, artists like Tom York has said it was a big influence on him, but there were a lot of singles actually released from this record, but I guess maybe because I wasn't really I was 2 years old when this came out and not into that style at that point. It kind of passed me by, and then revisiting it just didn't really connect with me. So I don't know if you feel the same way, but
Well, John, I was negative 19 years old and I feel the same way.
yeah.
This okay, I love Ashes to Ashes though, and
Hmm.
it serves as kind of a great career recap up to that point. You know, just that line, you know, makes you
Hmm.
recontextualize the whole song of Space Oddity. You know, it's like
Yeah.
you know, now I know Major Tom's a junkie. Ashes to Ashes, flunk to flunky. Everyone
Yeah.
knows Major Tom's a junkie. Such a great line.
Yeah.
I just I don't I know this is on like a lot of the critics list of the best albums of all time. I don't get it. It's
Yeah.
incredibly inaccessible. And
Hmm.
I think there's some cool sounds he's doing, like on Scary Monsters Super Creeps. It sounds like he's talking through a fan. Like if I
Yeah.
talk through my fan, that's what it sounds like. But it's not the most I know this is going to sound like a cop out or that I'm a hypocrite or something because it's not the most pleasant listen. It's like, well, Nathaniel, what are you talking about? Berlin's one of your favorite albums,
Sure.
but at least musically, I can get behind it.
Right.
Like here, I'm just like I appreciate his experimentation stuff, but I don't get why everyone loses their mind over this record. And
Yeah.
I'm really, yet again, I'm not really happy that this is like knocked some other stuff off the list. But I mean, obviously Bowie's one of the most influential figures, but I also agree, like I love him. I mean, he's not my favorite at all. He's not even close to the top of the list for me, but you can't take away everything he did musically and how many boundaries he pushed.
Hmm.
Um, but I would probably say an artist similar to him that I think is much better is Prince, but we don't have to talk about that right now. I just think
We'll get
that
to it. Yeah.
yeah, probably, but yeah, I think this album's incredibly overrated.
Hmm.
I
I
don't think it should be
agree.
on the list, but hey, I guess maybe we're missing something. I don't know. But
Yeah.
we'll talk about some other stuff later that I absolutely don't think should be on the list. So yeah, but okay, cool.
That's cool, man. Well, yeah. So now at number 52.
Make It Big by, you guessed it, Wham. They earned that explanation point, baby. Look, I will say this about Wham albums incredibly hit and miss, especially their first album, which is one of the worst albums I've ever heard in my life. There's a song called like Wham Rap, and that song is like literally the epitome of cringe. It's this white rapping that just sounds like absolute
Wow.
garbage. It's so bad. Don't listen to that album. I think it absolutely sucks. And then they come out with this thing. It's like, oh my goodness, what the hell? Like, where the hell did this come from? But I will say, I think I know why this album came to be because Andrew Ridgeley basically relinquished the rights to the songwriting over to George Michael, who obviously was such a great melody writer, wrote some of the most iconic hooks of all time, especially on this thing, like right from the go with "Wake Me Up Before You Go Go," just pure bubblegum pop. The jitterbug, and also the music video is like one of the
Yeah.
most 80s things I've ever seen. And I don't know how you could even question that George Michael was gay. Just watch that video. But regardless, I mean, it is such
Yeah.
a bright example of sunshine pop from the 80s. I mean, just the "Wake Me Up Before You Go Go, don't leave me hanging on like a yo-yo." I mean, how can you not love it? It might not be much in the way of lyrics, but it is such a great pop song. And really, I will say right off the bat, I think that all the album cuts on here are okay or like it good at the very least. But it's really, I mean, the singles make up half this album, which is
Yeah.
why I love it so much. Everything She Wants. If you need proof that George Michael, like, because I feel like a lot of people kind of like toss it out the window. Oh, it's like pure pop or whatever. There isn't really much to it. Listen to the lyrics on Everything She Wants. I mean, he's basically talking about this relationship he's doesn't want to be in, and now she's having his baby. That line where it's like, "I'll tell
Hmm.
you that I'm happy if you want me to." It's like, damn, that's
Yeah.
like
And his
so cool.
vocals on that are incredible,
Oh my
and
goodness.
the melodies with the harmonies with the da 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 da. It's so good, man.
It's oh my goodness, one of their
Yeah.
most iconic songs that I didn't actually know before I heard
Hmm.
this album, but I'm so glad because I think lyrically that's the well, I don't know, it could be lyrically the best song on the album, but of course there's some others we got to talk about, like Freedom. It's
Hmm.
just so great that I don't want your freedom.
Right.
Part-time love just brings me down. I mean, these hooks are just incredible when they
Yeah.
really like. That's the thing. When this album hits, it really hits. I think that's why I love it so much. And of course, you got to talk about what is my favorite song on the album, and I think maybe like one of my favorite songs from the '80s, "Careless Whisper," which is actually I think credited as a solo release, but it was on this album, man. And just you hear that
Mhm.
saxophone.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's just so iconic, but I think the
Yeah.
lyrics on here might just be the best, you know, just kind of like the contemplation of these two people coming together. And it's like, should we have done this? Should we have ruined this great thing that we had? And
Mhm.
then it's like, but I'm never gonna dance again. Guilty
Mhm.
feet have got no rhythm. And I mean, just to talk about George Michael again, one of the greatest singers of all time. It
Yeah.
is unbelievable his vocals throughout this entire thing. And obviously, when we get to his solo career, there's going to be a lot more to talk about with his singing there because this
Mhm.
is a guy who
Yeah.
just kept on getting better and better. But to me, man, I mean, this was really high on my list, and I think it should be higher because I mean, what epitomizes the '80s
Yeah.
more than this album? I don't think you can't get much better with '80s synth pop than this,
Well,
really.
your enthusiasm, man, is talking me into it, man. Because like, uh, "Wake Me Up Before You Go Go," I never used to take seriously, especially after
Sure,
seeing the
sure.
movie Zoolander, and that opening scene is so ridiculous. But you know, the other hits that you mentioned are like there's some real depth to them, and
Yeah.
also so well performed and produced at the timeless production, especially
Well,
at the
it
time.
sounds very dated with the
Well,
synth. I
you
mean,
know,
you know what
as
I
far
mean? Yeah.
in comparison with the 80s, I'm saying,
Sure,
but
sure,
yeah,
sure.
but Careless Whisper, especially, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great one. But yeah, man, and this may be the album that you've done the most singing on your review. So you obviously love it, man. And
I mean, how the best songs on here
yeah,
are so great, man. Some of the best
yeah,
songs from the '80s.
yeah,
So definitely should be higher in my opinion. I absolutely love this record, and but yeah,
yeah,
great choice. Obviously, gotta have Wham on the list.
yeah,
Uh,
man.
Absolutely.
Good
So
pick, guys. So now at number 51.
Midnight Love by Marvin Gaye from 1982. And unfortunately, the last album in his lifetime as he met his untimely end at the hands of his father a couple years later. Just so tragic what happened with that. And hearing this album, it's so evident there was still so much more Marvin had to give to us.
Yeah.
Though, and it's crazy that this one made the list and Let's Get It On didn't make the '70s list because I mean, that's a way better record.
Yeah.
I think so, but there's definitely moments on here where yeah, the production sounds a little bit dated, but he was like picking right. It would sound like he, you know, wasn't picking up right where he left off on that album. But
Hmm.
especially love, you know, like the opening Midnight Lady, where he's like really such a great groove, and just like he's talking about doing cocaine in the bathroom, which obviously was really consuming him at this time. As we all know, Marvin was very riddled with a lot of drug addiction at this time. And obviously, I mean, just Marvin Gaye has one of the most tragic stories in music history, which is just so sad to hear.
Yeah.
But Sexual Healing is obviously the biggest hit. You know, I want that sexual healing. I mean, it's just so
So great.
iconic.
Yeah.
Um, Rockin' After Midnight is another great track. But
Mhm.
honestly, you won't believe this. Maybe you will. I don't know. Till Tomorrow is probably my favorite song on here. Just that slow burn
I
ballad,
could see
man,
that.
with
Yeah.
these really engaging and intriguing chord progressions. And that's what I'm saying. It sounded like that could have been on Let's Get It On. It would have fit in
Hmm.
perfectly. I just
Hmm.
think one of his absolute best ballads and his vocal performance. I mean, my goodness, you all know Marvin Gaye was one of the absolute greatest vocalists of all time. And I mean, look no further than that track right there. I just
Hmm.
think there's not a bad song on here. I just think it kind of drops off in the last half, like I've been saying with
Hmm.
quite a few albums on
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
thing. Unlike, you know, Make It Big, which is perfectly structured with the way they place the songs. But yeah, I mean, this was on my list, obviously, and it's just great to see Marvin make the '80s as well, since his career was so short-lived in that decade.
Yeah, and yeah, I think it's at a good spot on the list. And I hate to say this, it probably should have been higher because I forgot to put it on my list because it
Okay.
should have
Yeah.
been on mine.
Right.
I
How dare
hadn't
you?
listened to it in a long time, and it slipped my mind somehow. But
John.
I re-listened to it again recently, and it's so good, man. Especially, of course, Sexual Healing, but I think Rockin' After Midnight is freaking incredible.
Yeah.
It's like his version of like a Michael Jackson Off the Wall song. Like I just love the
The
groove
horns.
to it and that dum, 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 ba, dum, on the guitar, man. Oh yeah, and the horns sound so incredible.
No.
His vocals are just off the charts, but it has such a good groove, man. It's great teeth out music. There's some other great ones throughout, but I think those two are my faves by far. I just absolutely love it. It makes you
Put that
want
in
to,
Sexual Healing.
yeah,
Okay, sure,
get on
sure.
the dance floor. And Until Tomorrow is really strong as well, like you said. So,
Yeah.
really great to see Marvin Gaye make the list. And sorry, I forgot about him.
It's okay. I think I might even put it a little bit lower, so I'm not going to complain about it being at this spot.
Yeah,
I like Wham more though, if you didn't know.
yeah, I noticed.
Not more than Marvin Gaye, but I mean more than this album.
Right on. Well,
Still,
that's cool,
great
man.
choice, guys.
Well, it's been such an interesting episode, and really the bottom 30 has been
So diverse.
all over the place. Yeah, we've had it all. So, guys, you've done an amazing job voting, and I can't wait to see what comes next in the top 50. It's going to
Can't
be
wait
great.
to show you.
But make sure that you subscribe to Nathaniel's channel. The next episode next week will be there, and can't wait to see you then, and keep this ball rolling.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
We-
thanks guys for tuning in, and I just love doing this with you, man. I just gotta say it, and I love you guys contributing, and just so we can talk about some great music, and yeah, let's keep the ball rolling, guys. And until then, we'll see you in the next one.
See you then. Peace.
Well, it's all right.